The rain hit Pine Street like a grudge being settled. Friday night, the kind that soaked through cheap jackets and turned the pavement into black mirrors reflecting neon signs that had given up trying to stay lit. Marcus Hayes wiped down the last table of his shift, the motion automatic after 5 years of the same routine, the same cracked vinyl booths, the same coffee rings that never quite came clean, no matter how hard he scrubbed. The woman in the corner booth had been sitting there for 90 minutes. Marcus had noticed her the way you notice a Porsche parked outside a pawn shop. Completely wrong, impossible to ignore. Black suit that probably cost more than his car. Watch catching the fluorescent light every time she lifted her coffee cup. Leather handbag so fine it looked soft even from across the room. She'd ordered one slice of apple pie, touched maybe 3 bites, nursed the same cup of coffee until it had to be cold. What she hadn't done was tip. Marcus picked up the receipt from the register where she'd left it 10 minutes ago, walking out into the rain without a word. $8.50. The tip line was blank, not even a slash through it, just empty white space like she'd forgotten he existed the moment the transaction cleared. He felt the disappointment settle low in his gut, familiar as an old injury. Rich people rarely tipped well. They thought showing up was generosity enough. He moved to clear her table, stacking the barely touched pie plate, and that's when he saw the envelope. White, crisp, folded once, tucked beneath the edge where the plate had been. On the outside, in handwriting too precise to be accidental, 7 words. For the waiter who remembers names. Marcus's hands were shaking when he opened it, though he couldn't say why. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a business card thick enough to feel expensive. The note read, I need to see you. This is not charity. This is a proposal. Come to Sterling Enterprises tomorrow at 10 a.m. Ask for Catherine Sterling. Don't ignore this. The business card was embossed, the kind of thing that costs money just to print. Catherine Sterling. She's CEO, Sterling Enterprises. Marcus knew that name. Everyone did. Forbes had ranked her among the richest self-made women in the country. Tech industry, philanthropy, the kind of person who moved through the world like she owned it. And she just sat in his diner for 90 minutes, left $0, and told him to come see her. His first thought was prank. His second was scam. Rich people didn't leave notes for waiters. They didn't care what happened after they walked out the door. But something about the way she'd watched him tonight, her eyes following every move like she was studying him, testing him, made the hair on his arm stand up. Pine Street Diner sat on the edge of town where the streetlights flickered and the pavement had given up pretending to be whole. The kind of place nobody came unless they had to. Friday nights brought the usual crowd, truck drivers killing time before their next haul, factory workers too tired to cook, college kids counting quarters for coffee that would last them 3 hours. Marcus had worked these tables for 5 years now, long enough that the vinyl felt like home and the coffee smell had soaked into his skin permanently. Before this, he'd written code for a software company downtown. Decent salary, health insurance, a future that made sense on paper. Then Jennifer died in a car accident on a Tuesday afternoon. Drunk driver, red light, the kind of thing that happened to other people until it happened to you. And suddenly, none of it mattered. Their daughter Sophie was 2 years old. Someone had to be there when she woke up screaming. Someone had to make breakfast and tie shoes and read stories before bed and explain why mommy wasn't coming home. Night shifts at the diner paid $23,000 a year for 60 hours a week, but it let him be a father during the hours that counted. He was 34 now, though some days he felt 50. His uniform was clean but worn thin at the elbows. His smile came easy because he'd learned that kindness cost nothing. And in a place like this, it was the only currency that mattered. Most customers never bothered learning his name. He knew all of theirs. Frank Martinez sat at the counter tonight, trucker cap pushed back, telling a story about a load of refrigerators he'd hauled to Montana in a blizzard. Marcus had heard the story twice before, but he listened anyway, nodding in the right places, because Frank needed someone to hear it more than Marcus needed to not hear it again. The whiskey glass sat between Frank's weathered hands, amber liquid catching the light. Marcus reached across and slid it farther down the counter, out of easy reach. Frank's eyes were already half glazed, the kind of drunk that thought it was sober enough to drive. You're gonna fall asleep at the wheel if you keep that up, Frank. Frank waved him off but didn't reach for the glass. You worry too much, kid. Someone has to. At booth 3, Amanda Foster hunched over a textbook, nursing coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. 19 years old, studying nursing at the community college. Counting out coins on more than one occasion, with her face going red when she came up short. Tonight she'd ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, dry toast and water. When Marcus brought the check, he'd already crossed out the total and written 0. Her eyes went wide when she saw it. Marcus, I can't. You can. Pay it forward someday. She looked like she might cry. Marcus moved to the next table before she could argue, because accepting gratitude always felt harder than giving help. At 9 o'clock, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He stepped into the kitchen where Tommy Wilson was scrubbing down the grill, 50 years of kitchen work carved into his face in grease burns and scars. Tommy caught Marcus's eye and nodded without looking up. They'd worked together long enough that permission didn't need words. Marcus answered on the second ring. Hey, sweetheart. Sophie's voice came through, small and sleepy, the way it always did when she called this late. Daddy, I miss you. When are you coming home? The words hit him in the chest every time, a clean punch that never got easier. Not until late, baby, but Mrs. Henderson is right next door if you need anything. I know. I just wanted to say goodnight. 5 years of this. 5 years of missing bedtime and school plays and the sound of her breathing in the next room. Jennifer used to say he was the best father she knew. He wondered what she'd think now, if she could see him working tables while their daughter called from an empty apartment to say goodnight because she was lonely. Good night, Sophie, I love you. Love you too, Daddy. He stayed there after she hung up, staring at the cracked tile floor, phone warm in his hand. The industrial dishwasher hissed behind him. Tommy kept scrubbing, giving him space. Eventually, Marcus pushed back through the kitchen doors because standing still hurt more than moving. That's when he noticed the woman in the corner booth for the first time. Really noticed her. She didn't fit. That much was obvious from 20 feet away. Her suit was black and sharp, the kind tailored to fit like a second skin. The watch on her wrist was understated but unmistakable. Marcus had seen enough luxury to recognize the real thing. Her handbag sat on the seat beside her arm, leather so fine it practically glowed under the fluorescent lights. She'd been sitting there for over an hour now, 1 cup of coffee, 1 slice of apple pie she'd barely touched. No phone in her hands, no book, no laptop, just sitting there, watching. Marcus had refilled her coffee twice, and both times she'd barely acknowledged him, just a slight nod, eyes moving past him like he was furniture. He approached with the pot again, forcing his customer service smile. Can I warm that up for you, ma'am? She looked up. Her eyes were dark and measuring, the kind that saw too much, processed too much, cataloged everything about you in the time it took to blink. 40-something maybe, though money had a way of hiding age. No wedding ring, no smile. Hope the coffee's warm enough for this cold night, ma'am. It's fine. Her voice was smooth, controlled, the kind that never wasted words or asked twice for anything. Marcus retreated. Something about her made him uneasy in a way he couldn't name. She didn't belong here and she knew it, but she stayed anyway, watching him move through his section like he was an exhibit at a museum. Across the diner, Frank was getting loud again, voice rising as the whiskey hit. Marcus caught his eye and Frank settled down, sheepish. At booth 3, Amanda was packing up her books, mouthing thank you one more time. Marcus waved her off. The woman in the corner watched all of it, her expression never changing. At 10:30, she stood and walked to the counter. Marcus met her at the register, suddenly aware of how his uniform smelled like fryer grease and how his shoes had a hole starting in the left sole. Just the coffee and pie? Yes. The total came to $8.50. She handed him a credit card without looking at him. No please or thank you, just the expectation that he'd know what to do. He ran it, gave her the receipt to sign. She signed it, left the merchant copy on the counter, and walked out into the rain. Marcus looked down at the receipt. The tip line was blank. $0, nothing. He'd expected it, but it still stung, the casual dismissal of it, the way she'd treated him like a vending machine. Insert card, receive coffee, walk away. He folded the receipt and moved to clear her table, and that's when he found the envelope. Inside was the note. Inside was the impossible. The rest of his shift passed in a haze. Marcus cleared tables and refilled coffee and smiled at customers while his brain tried to process what he'd just read. Catherine Sterling wanted to see him. A billionaire had left him a note. This is not charity. This is a proposal. The words repeated in his head like a song he couldn't shake. By the time he got home, it was 2:30 in the morning. The apartment was dark except for Sophie's nightlight, the little yellow star plugged into the wall that she'd had since she was a baby. He checked on her first, always first, standing in her doorway watching her sleep. She was curled around her stuffed rabbit, hair tangled on the pillow, breathing soft and even. 7 years old, and already she'd learned to fall asleep alone, to wake up in an empty apartment, to be brave when her father wasn't there. His phone buzzed. An email. He squinted at the screen, the brightness too sharp for this hour, and read it twice to make sure he understood. Subject: important update on tuition. Sophie's school was implementing a new enhanced learning program. Next semester's tuition was increasing from $1,200 to $1,800, a 50% jump, due in 6 weeks. Marcus's bank account had $340 in it, $340 between him and the next rent check, between him and groceries, between him and keeping the lights on. He did not have $1,800. He would not have $1,800. Not in 6 weeks, not in 6 months. Sophie couldn't transfer schools. She had friends there, teachers who knew her, a routine that kept her grounded in a world that had already tilted too far sideways when her mother died. Taking that away would break something in her that Marcus didn't think he could fix. He sat on the edge of his bed and stared at the wall. The note from Catherine Sterling felt heavy in his pocket, heavier than paper should feel. What kind of proposal? What could a billionaire possibly want from a waiter? Rich people didn't help poor people without wanting something in return. That was how the world worked. He'd learned that lesson the hard way, more than once. But then he thought about Sophie, about the email, about $340 that would never stretch to $1,800, no matter how he tried to make the math work. If there was even a 1% chance this could help her, could he really walk away? He lay down but didn't sleep. The ceiling had a water stain in the corner that looked like a map of somewhere he'd never been. Jennifer smiled at him from the photo on his nightstand, forever 32, forever healthy, forever about to say something he'd never get to hear. The night before she died, she'd kissed Sophie's forehead and told him, "Give her the life I couldn't give her." He'd been trying. God, he'd been trying. Working 60-hour weeks, smiling at customers who didn't see him, counting pennies, saying no to his daughter's request for things that cost $15. But trying wasn't the same as succeeding. Trying didn't pay tuition. Trying didn't change the fact that he was failing the one promise that mattered. At 6 in the morning, Sophie crawled into his bed, hair a mess, eyes still half closed with sleep. She pressed her face against his shoulder, and he wrapped his arms around her, this small, warm weight that was the only reason he got up anymore. "Did you sleep well, Daddy?" "I did, sweetheart." The lie came easy. 5 years of practice. "I had a dream about Mommy. She said she was proud of us." His throat closed up. He pulled her closer, breathing in the smell of her shampoo, cheap stuff from the dollar store, but it smelled like hope anyway. "She is, baby. I promise." "Are you going to work today?" "Not until tonight. We have the whole day together." She smiled and closed her eyes again, trusting him completely, believing him without question. Marcus stared at the wall and made his decision. He would go to Sterling Enterprises, not because he believed in miracles or thought a billionaire would save him, but because he needed to know why she'd sat in that diner for 90 minutes, why she'd watched him like he was a puzzle she needed to solve, why she'd left that note. And maybe, just maybe, because refusing to try felt like giving up, and he'd promised Jennifer he would never do that. The building was 40 stories of glass and steel, the kind that reflected clouds and made you feel small just looking at it. Marcus stood on the sidewalk across the street for 10 minutes before he crossed, gathering courage the way other people gathered breath. His suit was the only one he owned, from his wedding 7 years ago, too tight in the shoulders now, pants riding a little short. But it was the best he had. The lobby smelled like money. Fresh flowers on marble surfaces, cologne that probably cost more per ounce than Marcus made per hour, floors polished to a mirror shine. The reception desk looked like something from a museum, all clean lines and expensive wood. The woman behind it glanced up as he approached, her smile professional and distant, the kind that said she could tell exactly how much his shot cost and had already decided he didn't belong here. "I'm here to see Catherine Sterling." His voice came out rougher than he meant, nerves making it crack slightly. "Do you have an appointment?" "She asked me to come. My name is Marcus Hayes." The receptionist picked up her phone and murmured something he couldn't hear, her eyes never leaving his face, assessing him like livestock at auction. She listened, then hung up, and when she looked at him again, there was surprise in her expression. Genuine shock that someone like him had actually been expected. 38th floor, elevator on the left. He rode up alone, watching the numbers climb, his reflection staring back at him from the polished walls. He looked out of place. He looked like someone who'd wandered in from another life entirely, which was true, he supposed. The man in the reflection was tired and broke, and wearing a suit that didn't fit. The man in the reflection was pretending to be someone who belonged in places like this. The doors opened onto a hallway of glass and dark wood, all sharp angles and deliberate emptiness. A young man in a suit that fit properly materialized immediately, the kind of assistant who got paid well to be invisible until needed. "Mr. Hayes, right this way." They walked past offices where people sat at computers worth more than Marcus's car, past conference rooms with views that stretched to the horizon. The assistant stopped at a set of double doors at the end of the hall, knocked twice, and opened them without waiting for an answer. "Mr. Hayes is here." Catherine Sterling stood behind a desk that could have fit Marcus's entire apartment. The office was massive and minimal, all clean lines and natural light flooding through floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city like a kingdom. She wore a different suit today, charcoal gray, and her hair was pulled back in a way that made her look sharper somehow, more severe. "Thank you, David." The assistant nodded and left, closing the doors behind him with a soft click that sounded final. Catherine gestured to the chairs across from her desk. "Please sit." Marcus sat. She didn't, not immediately. Instead, she walked to a small table near the window where an expensive coffee maker sat, the kind that ground beans fresh, the kind Marcus had only ever seen in magazine ads. She made 2 cups in silence, each movement deliberate, and then brought them both to the desk and sat across from him. It was strange watching a billionaire pour coffee like it was normal. He'd expected her to have someone do it for her. Expected her to have someone do everything for her. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would." Marcus wrapped his hands around the cup. It was warm and solid and real, grounding him in a room that felt like a dream. "With all due respect, Miss Sterling, why am I here? And why the $0 tip?" She took a sip of her coffee, set it down carefully. "The tip was a test. I needed to see how you'd react to being overlooked." Something hot flared in his chest, anger rising fast and sharp. "You tested me? Like some kind of experiment?" "Yes." She didn't look away, didn't apologize. "And you passed. You didn't curse me, didn't complain to your coworkers, didn't even frown. You said thank you and wished me a good night." Marcus stood up, chair scraping against the floor loud in the quiet room. "I don't know what kind of game this is, but I'm not interested." "It's not a game." Her voice stayed level, controlled, like she'd expected this exact reaction. "Sit down, please." He stayed standing, pulse hammering in his throat. "I came here because I thought maybe you needed something, that maybe this was real, but you're just bored. You wanted to see what the poor waiter would do when you insulted him." Catherine stood as well, meeting his eyes across the desk. She was tall, he realized, almost his height. "I need someone who treats people with dignity regardless of their status. I've been looking for months. I watched you for an hour last night. The way you handled the drunk driver, the college girl who couldn't pay, the phone call with your daughter. You were kind when no one was watching. That's rare. So you insulted me to prove a point? I tested you to make sure you're real." She walked around the desk, closer now, and Marcus caught the scent of her perfume, something subtle and expensive that probably had a French name. "I'm offering you a job, community outreach director for a project I'm launching. $75,000 a year, full benefits, and a scholarship for your daughter at one of the best private schools in the state. The number hit him like a physical thing, stealing his breath. $75,000. He made $23,000 working 60-hour weeks, came home smelling like fryer grease with $340 in his bank account and no way to pay his daughter's tuition. $75,000 was a different life. $75,000 was everything. What do you want from me? The words came out quieter than he intended, all the fight draining out of him in the face of that impossible number. I'm just a waiter. I don't have a degree in community outreach. I don't have connections. What could I possibly do for you? Catherine picked up a folder from her desk, held it out to him. You've been there. You know what it's like to work 2 jobs and still come up short, to smile at people who don't see you, to make choices no one should have to make. I need someone who won't treat struggling families like charity cases, someone who will see them as people. Marcus took the folder, opened it with shaking hands. Inside were documents, spreadsheets, photographs of families that looked like his, tired, broke, trying. The header on the first page read, Second Chances Initiative, a program for single parents in difficult circumstances, job training, placement assistance, childcare support, educational grants for their children. The budget was in the millions. You want me to run this? I want you to help build it, to make sure it actually helps people instead of just making me feel good. She sat back down, gestured for him to do the same. You have 3 days to think about it. If you say yes, you start in 2 weeks. Marcus closed the folder. This is too much. There has to be a catch. The catch is that you'll work harder than you have ever worked, that you'll carry the weight of knowing families are depending on you, that you'll have to make decisions that affect real lives. She leaned forward, elbows on the desk. If that sounds easy, then you're not the right person. He wanted to say yes. God, he wanted to say yes so badly it hurt. Sophie's school bill, the overdue electric, the car that needed new brakes. $75,000 would change everything. But nothing was free. Not like this. Not from people like her. I need to think about it. Catherine nodded once. 3 days. You have my number. Marcus left the folder on her desk and walked out. His hands didn't stop shaking until he was back on the street, breathing exhaust and rain, surrounded by people who belonged in this world in ways he never would. That night at the diner, Marcus told Tommy about the meeting while the dinner rush screamed around them. Steam rose from the industrial dishwasher. Grease popped on the grill. Tommy scraped at burned bits with hard, angry motions. 50 years of kitchen work in every stroke. Rich people don't give, Marcus. They buy. Tommy didn't look up. What do you think she wants to buy from you? I don't know. That's what scares me. Lisa Parker pushed through the kitchen doors with a tray of dirty plates. 25 years old and still saving for cosmetology school. Still hustling for tips that never quite added up to enough. I heard about Sterling. My cousin worked for one of her companies. She's ruthless in business. Fires people without blinking. You sure you want to get involved with someone like that? Marcus leaned against the counter, doubt wrapping tighter around his chest with every word. I don't know what I want. Tommy's voice went softer. You want to take care of your kid. We all get that. Just make sure you're not trading one kind of broke for another. After his shift, Marcus picked up Sophie from Mrs. Henderson's apartment next door. The older woman waved away his thanks like always, like watching a 7-year-old 3 nights a week was nothing. Like everyone had neighbors who cared that much. Sophie was tired, rubbing her eyes as they walked the 2 blocks home through streets that never quite felt safe this late. Can we stop at the store, Daddy? I need pencils for school. The 24-hour grocery on the corner had fluorescent lights too bright and floors that stuck to your shoes. Sophie held his hand as they walked down the school supply aisle. She picked out the cheapest pack of pencils without being asked, already knowing not to reach for the fancy ones with erasers that didn't leave smudges. On their way to the register, they passed the book section. Sophie stopped, her eyes catching on a colorful cover. A kid's science book filled with pictures of planets and animals and the human body. $15. Marcus watched her look at it, watched the want cross her face, watched her start to reach, and then stop herself. Daddy, can I? She caught herself looking up at him with those serious eyes that were too old for 7. Never mind, I can get it from the library. Marcus looked at the book, looked at his daughter's face, looked at the way she'd already learned not to ask, had already internalized the mathematics of poverty that said wanting things cost too much. His heart broke in a way that was becoming familiar, a clean fracture that never quite healed before breaking again. Next time, sweetie. The words tasted like failure. It's okay, Daddy. I can borrow it from the library. She said it with such easy acceptance that something inside him cracked wider. They bought the pencils and walked home in silence. After Sophie was asleep, Marcus sat at his laptop and searched for Catherine Sterling, needing to know who she really was, what she really wanted. Pages of results came up, articles about her company, interviews about her philanthropy, a Forbes profile from 2 years ago detailing her rise from nothing to billions. Self-made, they called her. Tech industry, started her company in her garage and built it into something that moved markets. Most of it was what he expected. Glossy, corporate, the kind of success story that sounded good in speeches. But then he found an older article, buried several pages deep where nobody looked anymore. Local newspaper from 2010. The headline read, "From waitress to boardroom, Catherine Sterling credits late mother's work ethic." Marcus read it twice, then a third time to be sure. Catherine's mother had been named Grace Sterling. She'd worked as a waitress for over 20 years, raising her daughter alone after her husband died. Worked 2 jobs most of her life, sometimes 3, sacrificing everything to put Catherine through school. Grace Sterling had died in 2018 after a long illness. The article didn't say what kind, only that she'd passed after years of struggling. Marcus stared at the screen until his eyes burned. Catherine's mother had been a waitress, a single parent, just like him. This wasn't random. This wasn't some billionaire looking for a project. This was personal. This was about her mother. He called the number on Catherine's card the next morning. The assistant answered, but Catherine picked up within 30 seconds, like she'd been waiting. "Mr. Hayes?" Marcus didn't bother with pleasantries. "I need to know the real reason." "Why me?" "The actual reason." Long silence on the other end. Then, "Come back to my office, 2 o'clock. He was there at 1:45. This time, Catherine met him in the lobby herself, which surprised him enough that he almost didn't follow when she gestured toward the elevators. She led him not to her office, but to a smaller conference room with a single window overlooking the parking garage. They sat across from each other at the table, and for the first time since he'd met her, Catherine Sterling looked uncertain. "My mother's name was Grace." Her voice was quiet, controlled the way someone's voice gets when they're holding something heavy. "She raised me alone. My father died when I was 3. She worked as a waitress at a place called Rosie's Diner. 2 shifts a day, sometimes 3. Exhausted all the time, but she never complained, not once." Marcus listened without interrupting, watching emotions cross her face that the careful makeup couldn't quite hide. "When I was 15, she got hit by a drunk driver on her way home from work. Broke her back. 3 surgeries, physical therapy for months. We had insurance, but it wasn't enough. We were going to lose everything." Catherine's hands folded tight on the table, knuckles going white. "There was a man who used to come into Rosie's every morning. My mother said he was poor, worked construction, could barely afford breakfast. But when he heard what happened, he organized a fundraiser, got the whole neighborhood involved, raised enough to cover most of the bills." She looked out the window at nothing. "My mother tried to find him after she recovered, wanted to thank him, pay him back, but he was gone, moved away, someone said. She never got to thank him. It bothered her for the rest of her life." Marcus felt something shift in his chest, pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. "And you're looking for him?" "He died 5 years ago. I found out too late." Catherine turned back to him, and her eyes were wet, though no tears fell. "But I saw in you what my mother saw in him. Dignity without arrogance. Kindness without expectation. She used to say he always remembered her name, even though she was just the woman who poured his coffee. You do the same thing. You see people. So this is about your mother. This is about honoring what she valued, what she taught me. Catherine's voice went firm again. The emotion locked back down where it couldn't show. I'm not choosing you because you're poor. I'm choosing you because you're good. There's a difference. Marcus wanted to believe her, wanted it so badly he could taste it, sweet and dangerous as poison. But belief had burned him before. What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? My mother wasn't good enough by society's standards, never finished college, worked minimum wage her whole life. Catherine leaned forward, but she was good. That's what matters. He sat with that for a long moment, turning it over in his mind, testing it for holes. I need to talk to my daughter. Of course. That night, Marcus made Sophie her favorite dinner, macaroni and cheese from a box with hot dogs cut up in it, the kind of meal that cost $3 and made her smile like he'd given her the world. After they ate, he sat her down on their worn couch and pulled her into his lap. Sophie, I need to talk to you about something important. She looked up at him with Jennifer's eyes, serious and trusting. Okay, Daddy. He told her about the job offer, about the money, about the school, kept it simple, watched her face for any sign of worry or fear. She listened without interrupting, nodding in the places that made sense to her. Would we have to move? No, baby. Same apartment, same neighborhood. Would you still work at night? No, I'd work during the day. I'd be home for dinner every night. Her face lit up in a way that made his chest hurt. Really? Really? She threw her arms around his neck and Marcus held her tight, breathing in the smell of her cheap shampoo and thinking about all the nights he'd missed, all the dinners he hadn't been there for, all the times she'd fallen asleep alone because he was pouring coffee for strangers. Then you should do it, Daddy. I miss you at dinner. Okay, I will. But the next day, before Marcus could call Catherine back, before he could say yes to the impossible, everything fell apart in the way things always seem to fall apart right when hope started creeping back in. Someone at Sterling Enterprises talked to the press. Maybe the receptionist who'd looked at him like he was dirt on her expensive shoes. Maybe the assistant who'd led him down those pristine hallways. It didn't matter who. What mattered was that by noon a local news website was running a story. Billionaire Sterling plucks waiter from diner for high-paying position. What's the real story? The article was full of speculation, questions about why a successful CEO would hire someone with no experience, implications about their relationship that stopped just short of saying anything actionable. The insinuation was clear enough. By afternoon, everyone at Pine Street Diner knew, and by the time Marcus showed up for his shift that night, the whispers had already started. Tommy wouldn't look at him. That was how Marcus knew it was bad. Tommy, who'd worked beside him for 5 years, who'd covered his shifts when Sophie got sick, who'd never judged him for anything. Tommy kept his eyes on the grill like the burgers required his complete attention. Lisa gave him sad, pitying glances from across the diner. Frank Martinez nursed his coffee at the counter without telling any stories. Amanda Foster, the nursing student who'd graduated last spring and still came back sometimes, avoided his eyes entirely. The other customers whispered behind their menus, heads bent together, voices low enough that Marcus couldn't hear the words, but loud enough that he knew they were about him. Ray Murphy, the owner, pulled Marcus aside before the dinner rush hit. 58 years old with gray hair and a beer gut, wearing the same stained apron he'd worn for 20 years. He put a hand on Marcus's shoulder the way you'd touch someone at a funeral. Marcus, I don't know what's going on with you and that woman, but be careful. People are talking. There's nothing going on. It's just a job. Ray's expression said he didn't believe that for a second. I believe you, son, but the world's not kind to people who rise too fast. Just watch yourself. The worst part came at 7 o'clock. Marcus was refilling coffee when his phone rang. Sophie's school, the number he'd learned to recognize with dread because it never brought good news. He stepped into the back hallway, away from the customers and the noise, pressing the phone to his ear. Ms. Peterson's voice came through careful and concerned, the tone teachers used when they had to deliver bad news to parents who were already struggling. Some of the kids at school had heard their parents talking. They'd been teasing Sophie all day, calling her dad names Marcus had to ask her to repeat because he didn't understand them at first. Gold digger, sugar baby. They were saying he was sleeping with Catherine Sterling for money. that he was using her, that he'd sold himself for a fancy job he didn't deserve. Sophie was 7 years old. She didn't understand the words, but she understood the venom behind them, the way her friends had turned on her, the way the other parents looked at her now like she was contaminated. Marcus left work early for the first time in 5 years. Ray didn't argue. Mrs. Henderson met him at the door when he got home. Sophie's small form visible behind her, face red and blotchy from crying. The older woman squeezed his arm without saying anything because there was nothing to say. Sophie ran to him the moment Mrs. Henderson stepped aside. Marcus caught her and held on, feeling her shake with sobs against his chest, her tears soaking through his uniform. She was too young for this, too young to understand why people were cruel, why the world punished you for things that weren't your fault, why trying to climb out of poverty meant everyone around you wanted to push you back down. "Daddy, why are the kids being mean? They said you did something bad. Did you?" The question hit him harder than any insult could have. Marcus pulled back enough to look at her face, at Jennifer's eyes staring up at him full of confusion and hurt. "No, baby, Daddy didn't do anything wrong." "Then why are they saying those things?" "Because people don't always understand, but it's going to be okay." Sophie's lip trembled. "I don't want you to take the new job if it makes people mean." That was it. That was the line. Marcus could handle people talking about him, could handle the looks and the whispers and the judgment, but watching his daughter suffer because he dared to hope for something better, that was too much. The money wasn't worth her dignity. Nothing was worth that. After she fell asleep, he called Catherine. The number rang twice before she picked up, her voice alert despite the late hour. "Mr. Hayes." His voice came out tight, controlled only by force of will. "I can't do this." "Marcus, listen. I can't let my daughter suffer because of me. The money isn't worth her dignity." He was standing in his kitchen, staring at nothing, one hand gripping the counter hard enough to hurt. "I'm sorry, I can't." He hung up before she could respond, sat down at his table in the dark, and felt like he'd failed everyone. Jennifer, Sophie, even Catherine somehow. But Sophie came first. She had to come first. That was the only rule that mattered. At 8 in the morning, someone knocked on his door. Marcus opened it to find Catherine Sterling standing in his hallway looking completely out of place in her expensive coat and heels, surrounded by peeling paint and the smell of mildew that never quite went away no matter how much he scrubbed. "Can I come in?" He let her in because he didn't know what else to do. Catherine looked around his apartment, the second-hand furniture he'd bought from thrift stores, the toys scattered on the floor, the water stain on the ceiling he couldn't afford to fix, the whole tiny space that represented everything he'd been able to give his daughter, which wasn't much. Sophie was eating cereal at the small table, still in her pajamas, hair uncombed. She looked up when Catherine walked in, eyes going wide with surprise. "Who's that, Daddy?" "This is Miss Sterling. She's—" Marcus didn't know how to finish that sentence. Catherine walked over and crouched down next to Sophie's chair, so they were at eye level. She pulled something from her bag, the science book from the grocery store, the one Sophie had wanted, the $15 Marcus couldn't afford. Sophie's eyes went huge. "How did you know?" "Your dad told me you liked science. I thought you might like this." Catherine's voice went soft in a way Marcus had never heard before, gentle and careful. And Sophie looked at Marcus, uncertain. He nodded. She took the book carefully like it might break if she held it wrong. "Thank you." The words came out barely above a whisper. Catherine stayed crouched there, still meeting Sophie's eyes. "Your dad is the bravest man I know. He said no to a lot of money because he loves you. He wanted to protect you. That's what real fathers do." Sophie's lip trembled again, fresh tears starting. "But the kids at school said—" "The kids at school don't know what they're talking about." Catherine's voice went firm without being harsh. "My mom was like your dad. She worked hard. People looked down on her sometimes. But I was proud of her. And you should be proud of your dad. He's a good man. Don't let anyone tell you different." Sophie nodded, tears running down her cheeks. Catherine stood and turned to Marcus. Something had changed in her expression, a hardness around her eyes that hadn't been there before. "I'm handling the newspaper. They'll print a retraction by tomorrow." Her voice was back to business mode, crisp and controlled. I've already called Sophie's school. If any child harasses her again, there will be consequences. My lawyers are sending a letter to the principal today. Marcus started to thank her, but she held up a hand, stopping him. But you were right to say no. The admission seemed to cost her something. I pushed too hard, too fast. I was so focused on the program, I didn't think about what it would cost you personally. She sat down at his table, suddenly looking tired in a way that expensive makeup couldn't hide. My mother used to say good intentions without wisdom cause harm. I'm sorry, Marcus. I put you and Sophie in an impossible position. Marcus sat down across from her, surprised by the honesty. Catherine Sterling, billionaire CEO, admitting she'd made a mistake. Truth is, I've launched 3 other initiatives before this one. All failed within the first year. Her fingers traced patterns on his cheap tablecloth. Because I hired people with perfect resumes who didn't understand the work, who treated it like a charity project, not real people. You're the first person I've met who actually lives this, and I almost destroyed it by being careless. What are you saying? Catherine looked up at him. I'm saying I need to do this differently. Not a job offer, a partnership. You run the program your way. I provide resources, but we start small, 3 families, not 50. 6-month pilot. Prove the concept works before scaling. You work from home the first month, so we're not making you a target. And you keep working at the diner as much as you want. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. Marcus listened, hearing something different in her voice now. Respect, maybe, or recognition that she couldn't do this without him any more than he could do it without her. Salary starts at $45,000 for the pilot phase. Still double what you make now, but not flashy enough to invite comments. If the pilot succeeds, full 75, and we scale up. No scholarship for Sophie yet. That comes after we've proven this works. You earn everything. No shortcuts, no favors. She leaned forward, elbows on his table. This way, when people question you, you'll have results to show them. Not just my money, real outcomes. It was different. It was defensible. It was something Marcus could explain to Tommy and Ray and Frank without feeling like he was accepting charity. Why are you really doing this? Catherine was quiet for a long moment. Because my mother died thinking she never repaid that man's kindness. It haunted her every single day. I have resources she never had, and I'm not going to waste them. But I also can't do this without someone who understands. She gestured around his apartment. Someone who lives in a place like this and still helps people. Sophie had been quietly reading her new book, but she looked up now. Daddy, Miss Catherine said you're brave. Are you going to be brave now? Out of the mouths of children, Marcus looked at his daughter, at Catherine, at the second-hand furniture and water-stained ceiling that represented his life. At Jennifer's photo on the wall, forever smiling, forever asking him to give their daughter better. 3 conditions. Catherine straightened. Name them. 1, full transparency. Every decision, every dollar, I know where it goes. Marcus counted on his fingers. 2, if at any point this affects Sophie negatively, I walk. No questions, no debate. 3, we start with 3 families, not 5. I want to do this right, not fast. Catherine considered, then extended her hand across the table. Deal. They shook. Her grip was firm, warm, surprisingly calloused for someone who lived in a tower. Sophie clapped from her chair. Does this mean you'll be home for dinner, Daddy? Marcus pulled her onto his lap. Every night, baby. Catherine's phone rang. She answered, listened, her expression going grim. When? I'll be right there. She hung up and looked at Marcus. There's a problem. The newspaper didn't just speculate about us. They're running a follow-up story tomorrow. They found someone at the diner who claims they saw us arguing. They're spinning it as a relationship dispute. Marcus's stomach dropped. Who? Catherine showed him her phone. There was a photo from the diner, a quote underneath. Ray Murphy, owner of Pine Street Diner. Seemed personal, not professional. She came back, they argued. Draw your own conclusions. Marcus went to the diner immediately. Catherine insisted on coming, which made it worse somehow. The billionaire CEO in her expensive coat walking into this shabby place where he'd spent 5 years of his life, where everyone would see them together and believe the worst. Ray stood behind the counter, wouldn't meet his eyes. The lunch crowd was thin, but everyone stopped eating to watch. Marcus's voice came out harder than he intended. Ray, why? They paid me $500, Marcus. I got expenses. Ray's face flushed red, but his jaw stayed set, defensive. I didn't say anything untrue. Just what I saw. You saw a woman visiting to apologize and me protecting my daughter. You turned that into a scandal. Ray slammed his hand on the counter. You're the one cozying up to billionaires while the rest of us are still scraping by. You get to leave, go work in some tower downtown. What about us? What about the people still here? The truth came out then, bitter and raw. Ray's diner was losing money, had been for years. $500 was too much to turn down. But more than that, jealousy, resentment, the feeling of being left behind. Marcus realized with sudden clarity that this wasn't just about money. It was about watching someone escape while you stayed trapped. Catherine stepped forward before Marcus could respond. What if the diner was part of the program? Ray looked at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. What? Second Chance's initiative needs a partner location, a place where participants can meet, get coffee, feel comfortable, not a corporate office, real community space. Catherine's voice was calm, reasonable, the tone of someone making a business deal. I'll pay rent for conference room use, $2,000 a month, and will encourage participants to eat here, bring their families, more customers for you. She looked at Marcus. If that's okay with you. Marcus was torn between anger at Ray's betrayal and understanding Catherine's strategy. This solved multiple problems. Ray got financial help. The program got an authentic location. The community saw investment in the neighborhood instead of just someone being taken away. On one condition, Ray prints a retraction himself, tells the newspaper he was wrong, misunderstood the situation. Ray hesitated, pride fighting with practicality. Finally, he nodded. I can do that. Tommy pushed through the kitchen doors, grease-stained apron and all. He'd been listening the whole time. I was wrong about you, Marcus. Both of you. He looked at Catherine. You didn't have to help this place. Good businesses need good communities. This is good business. Tommy wiped his hands on his apron. Then count me in, whatever you need. Lisa joined them from behind the counter, followed by Frank Martinez from his usual spot. One by one, the people Marcus had worked beside for 5 years came forward, and he realized something he should have known all along. They doubted him because they were scared for him, not because they hated him. They were just people trying to survive in a world that didn't care about them, and he'd been one of them long enough that they wanted to protect him from disappointment. That night, they spread out across a corner booth, Marcus, Catherine, Tommy, Lisa, with notes and a laptop and coffee that actually tasted good because Tommy had made it special. Planning a program that might actually work, might actually help people, if they didn't screw it up. We need families who will trust us, but also have a real chance of success, Marcus said, pen tapping against his notepad. Can't set people up to fail. Tommy leaned back, arms crossed. There's Diana Chen, single mom, 2 kids, works overnight, stocking at the grocery. Smart woman, reliable, just needs a break. Lisa nodded. And Kevin Brooks, young guy, painter, puts himself through art school, comes in here late nights, orders the cheapest thing on the menu. His work is good. I've seen photos on his phone. Marcus added a name. Amanda graduated nursing school last year. She's working at City Hospital now, but drowning in student debt. Could use job placement, help, financial counseling. Catherine took notes on her laptop, fingers flying across the keys. What do they actually need? Not what I think they need. What would actually help them? Diana needs childcare more than anything. Marcus had thought about this all day. She can't take a better job if she can't afford care for her kids. That's the bottleneck. Tommy nodded. Kevin needs materials, studio space. He's talented but works from a tiny apartment. Can't create properly when you're living in a closet. Amanda needs loan consolidation, Lisa added. Maybe help finding a roommate to reduce rent. The debt payments are killing her. She's working 2 jobs and getting burned out. Catherine stopped typing, looked up. So, not one size fits all, customized support based on what each person actually needs. Exactly. Marcus met her eyes. Dignity means choice, means asking them what they need instead of telling them what we think is best. Something passed between them in that moment, an understanding that went deeper than words. Catherine was learning, actually learning, not just performing the motions of caring while staying safely distant. The woman who'd tested him with a $0 tip was starting to see what he'd known all along, that helping people meant trusting them to know their own lives better than you ever could. The front door opened. 3 people walked in with cameras and microphones. Local news crew. The reporter was a woman in her 30s, aggressive smile, predatory eyes. Mr. Hayes, is it true you and Catherine Sterling are in a personal relationship? Marcus froze. Catherine stood, voice going cold. This is private property. You need to leave. The reporter ignored her, microphone thrust toward Marcus. Our sources say you've been seen arguing. Are you using her for money? Frank Martinez stood up from the counter. Hey, leave him alone. Amanda Foster, eating dinner at a booth, joined in. Marcus helped me through school. He's a good person. Other customers started speaking up, voices overlapping. He gave me a free meal when I was broke. He remembered my daughter's name. He's not using anyone. One by one, the people Marcus had served for 5 years rose to defend him, and he felt something crack open in his chest that had been locked tight since Jennifer died. Ray stepped out from behind the counter. You want a story? I'll give you a story. He looked at Marcus, regret written across his face. I was wrong. I sold him out for $500 because I was jealous and scared. But I've watched this man for 5 years. He works harder than anyone I know, raises his kid alone, and still finds time to care about strangers. If a billionaire sees value in that, maybe we should too. Now get out of my diner. The reporter tried one more angle, turning to Catherine. But Miss Sterling, why really hire someone with no qualifications? Sophie walked in holding Mrs. Henderson's hand. She ran to Marcus, and he scooped her up, protective instinct overriding everything else. Sophie looked at the reporter with Jennifer's eyes, confused and scared. Are you being mean to my daddy? The reporter's face softened. You couldn't be aggressive toward a man holding his frightened 7-year-old daughter, not on camera. No, sweetie, we're just talking. Sophie turned to Marcus, loud enough for everyone to hear. He's the best daddy. He takes care of everyone. The reporter lowered her microphone. I think we have what we need. They left. Marcus stood there holding his daughter while the diner applauded, and for the first time since Jennifer died, he didn't feel alone anymore. Catherine watched it all from the booth, something shifting in her expression. Later, after Sophie had gone home with Mrs. Henderson and the dinner crowd had thinned, she pulled Marcus aside. You have something I can't buy. What? Trust, real relationships, community. She looked around the diner at the people who'd defended him. I can write checks. You can change lives. Together, maybe we actually do this right. When do we start? Monday. Small office space above the diner. Ray's offering it. Nothing fancy. Just a desk, phone, filing cabinet. You work there during the day while Sophie's at school. I check in twice a week. We find our 3 families. Prove it works. Marcus looked at the diner, at the community that had rallied around him, at Catherine standing there in her expensive coat in the middle of his world trying so hard to understand it. At Sophie's photo on his phone, smiling and safe. At Jennifer's memory whispering that maybe it was okay to try again. Okay, let's do it. The office above the diner was dusty and small, with one window overlooking the parking lot and a space heater that rattled when it ran. Marcus cleaned it himself on Sunday, scrubbing floors and wiping down the donated desk Ray had found in storage. Catherine arrived Monday morning with a laptop, a printer, and boxes of folders, looking out of place in her tailored suit surrounded by peeling paint and old plumbing. Not exactly Silicon Valley. Marcus plugged in the space heater. No, it's better. It's real. They spent the first week setting up systems, learning nonprofit regulations, writing procedures for intake and support. Catherine taught him the business side, budgets, metrics, reporting requirements. Marcus taught her the people side, how to listen instead of solve, how to wait instead of fix, how to trust someone's assessment of their own needs even when you thought you knew better. Diana Chen came in on Wednesday. 32 years old, 2 kids, 8 and 5, Worked overnight stocking shelves at the grocery for $24,000 a year. She sat across from Marcus at the desk, arms crossed, defensive. Why help me? What do you want? Nothing. Just want to see you succeed. Diana's eyes narrowed, searching for the trap. People don't do nice things for free. I know how that feels. Marcus leaned back in his chair. What do you need, really need, not what you think I want to hear? Something in his voice must have convinced her because Diana's shoulders dropped and tears started. Childcare. I can't take a day job without it. And teeth fixed, lost 2 molars, can't afford the dentist. I'm embarrassed to smile in interviews. Marcus made notes. Okay, what else? That's it. Just those 2 things and I could get out of this hole. She wiped her eyes. I want to do medical billing. There's a 10-week course at the community college. If I could take that, get my teeth fixed, have someone watch my kids, I could make $42,000 a year at the hospital. That's everything. He spent the next 3 days setting it up, partnered with a local dental practice willing to do pro bono work for program participants, found a child care co-op, group of single moms watching each other's kids on rotating schedules, enrolled Diana in the medical billing course, evening classes so she could still work. Total program cost, $3,500. Timeline, 10 weeks to a new job. Kevin Brooks came in Friday, 25 years old, working construction to pay for art school, living in a studio apartment so small he had to move his bed to paint. Marcus visited him there, saw canvases stacked against walls, cityscapes, portraits, real life rendered in colors that made you feel things you didn't have words for. These are incredible. Why aren't you selling them? Kevin laughed, bitter. No one knows I exist. Can't afford gallery space or the time to make enough work to show. Construction pays bills, but by the time I get home, I'm too tired to paint. Marcus negotiated with a local gallery. The owner's daughter had been helped by a program like this years ago, she remembered. They'd show Kevin's work, 60-40 split with Kevin getting the larger share. The program would pay Kevin $800 a month for 6 months to reduce his construction hours. More time to paint, more work to sell, a chance to build reputation. Total cost, $4,800. Amanda Foster he knew already. Now an RN at City Hospital making $48,000 a year but drowning in $85,000 of student debt. Payments so high she worked 2 jobs and was getting burned out, seriously considering quitting nursing entirely. Marcus connected her with a debt consolidation nonprofit. They negotiated her payments down to manageable levels. The program covered 3 months of rent to give her breathing room. She dropped the second job, started focusing on nursing again. Her mental health improved. She became a better nurse. Total cost, $4,500. 3 people, $12,800. 3 months. The work was harder than Marcus had imagined. 10-hour days of phone calls and meetings, learning regulations, building partnerships, tracking outcomes. Catherine came by twice a week to review progress, and each time she stayed longer, asked better questions, listened more carefully. But she was still learning, still making mistakes born of privilege and good intentions colliding with reality. In week 8, Diana called Marcus crying. Catherine had upgraded her apartment without asking. Nicer place, better school district, $1,200 a month rent. Signed a 1-year lease. Thought she was helping. I can't afford this after the program ends. Diana's voice was panicked over the phone. She locked me into a lease I'll never be able to pay. What happens in 6 months when the support ends? Marcus felt rage build in his chest, hot and immediate. He'd been afraid of exactly this. Catherine wielding money like a hammer, solving problems without understanding that solutions could become new problems if you didn't think past your own good intentions. He stormed into Sterling Enterprises without calling first, past the reception desk where they knew him now, up to the 38th floor, into Catherine's office without knocking. We need to talk, now. Catherine looked up from her computer, startled. What happened? You gave Diana an apartment she can't afford, a lease she'll be trapped in when our support ends. You took away her choice, her control over her own life. You turned help into a cage. Catherine stood defensive. I gave her a better home, a safer neighborhood, better schools for her kids. You gave her stress. Marcus's voice rose, control slipping. She was fine in her old apartment. It was affordable. She needed childcare and job training, not expensive rent. This is exactly what your mother would hate. Catherine stopped, face going pale. What did you say? Marcus's voice went quieter but no less intense. Your mother worked her whole life barely making ends meet. What would she say about putting someone in an apartment they can't afford? About making them dependent on your money, on your continued generosity? She'd say you learned nothing from watching her struggle. Catherine sat down slowly, something breaking in her expression. She'd say I'm doing exactly what hurt her, making people feel small by trying to make their lives big. Silence filled the office. Catherine stared at her hands, and when she looked up, her eyes were wet with tears that didn't fall. I'm sorry, I thought I was helping. I thought I understood, but I just threw money at the problem because that's what I know how to do. Marcus pulled out a chair, sat down across from her. The anger was fading, replaced by something more complicated. She was trying, genuinely trying. She'd just grown up with so much money that she didn't understand how differently it worked for people who had none. Money isn't help if it creates dependency. Dignity means giving people choices, not making choices for them. Catherine wiped her eyes. How do we fix this? They broke Diana's lease. Catherine paid the penalty without complaint. Diana stayed in her old apartment, the one she could actually afford. Catherine drove to Diana's place that afternoon and apologized in person, and Marcus went with her, watched her sit at Diana's kitchen table and say the words, I was wrong, I'm sorry, I should have asked you what you wanted, instead of assuming I knew better. Diana looked at Marcus, then back at Catherine. I know you meant well. Good intentions aren't enough. I need to do better. Catherine's voice was firm, the CEO returning, and I will. After they left, Marcus and Catherine stood in the parking lot outside Diana's building. Evening coming on, streetlights starting to flicker to life. Catherine leaned against her car, looking tired in a way that went deeper than physical exhaustion. Thank you for calling me out. Someone had to. Most people wouldn't. She looked at him. Most people would have let me keep making mistakes because I'm rich and they're afraid of me. You're not afraid of me. Marcus shrugged. You hired me to make sure the program helps people. Can't do that if I'm scared to tell you the truth. Something shifted in her expression, warmth breaking through the professional distance she usually maintained. You're teaching me things I should have learned years ago. You're learning, that matters. They stood there for a moment longer than necessary, the air between them charged with something neither acknowledged. Then Catherine got in her car and drove away, and Marcus walked back to his own beat-up sedan, thinking about how complicated people were. How wrong he'd been about her in some ways, how right in others. By month 3, results were coming in. Diana finished her medical billing course at the top of her class, got hired at the hospital, making $42,000 a year, a 70% increase. She bought a used car, first car she'd owned in 5 years. Her kids started thriving, no longer stressed about whether mom could make rent. The child care co-op had grown to 5 mothers now, all helping each other. Kevin's art show sold out. A local magazine ran a profile, from construction worker to rising artist. Commission work was coming in. He was making $40,000 a year from painting, enough to quit construction entirely. He'd started mentoring 2 younger artists from the program, passing forward what had been given to him. Amanda led a nursing mentorship program at City Hospital now. Her debt payments were manageable. She'd dropped the second job and her patient care scores had improved dramatically. The hospital partnered with Second Chance for job placement. They'd hired 3 nurses through the program so far. 3 families, $12,800, 3 lives transformed. But Marcus had also learned hard lessons about failure. Robert Patterson had been participant number 4. 38 years old, laid-off factory worker. The program got him into welding certification, state-of-the-art training that should have led to jobs paying $60,000 a year. But halfway through the course, Robert stopped showing up. Marcus visited his apartment, found him drunk at 2 in the afternoon, place smelling like despair and unwashed dishes. I can't do this. I'm too old, too broken. Robert's voice was slurred, eyes unfocused. You're not. You just need to give it time. You don't get it. Some of us can't be saved. Robert stood up, swaying. Now get out. Marcus left, sat in his car outside Robert's building for 20 minutes trying to figure out what he'd done wrong, what he could have done differently. Eventually, he drove to the diner and sat at the counter staring at cold coffee until midnight, feeling like a failure. Catherine found him there. She didn't say anything at first, just sat down beside him and waited. I lost one. I know. I did everything right. Why didn't it work? Catherine was quiet for a long time. Because people have free will. You can't save everyone. You can only offer the chance. Robert has to want it. You can't want it for him. But my whole job is helping people. You are, but helping isn't controlling. You're learning what I learned with Diana's apartment. We can't force outcomes, only create opportunities. She put her hand on his arm, brief contact that felt like an anchor. You gave Robert a chance. He chose not to take it. That's not your failure. That's his choice, and you have to respect it even when it hurts. Marcus looked at her hand on his arm, at the genuine compassion in her eyes, and felt something shift between them. She wasn't just his boss or his partner. She was becoming something else. Friend, maybe, or something he wasn't ready to name yet. Someone who understood the weight he carried, who didn't try to make it lighter, but just sat with him in the darkness until morning came. 2 months later, Catherine's quarterly board meeting was approaching. She'd been funding the pilot from her discretionary budget, but scaling the program required board approval. That meant presenting results, defending expenditures, convincing 12 wealthy board members that this was worth millions of dollars. They were in the office above the diner, going over metrics, when Catherine closed her laptop and looked at him with worry in her eyes for the first time since they'd met. When will you tell them about the program? Next week. Board meeting is Thursday. They're not going to like it. Catherine shook her head. They care about ROI, return on investment. How do I quantify what you've done? Put Diana's smile in a spreadsheet? Measure Kevin's newfound confidence in dollars? Marcus leaned back in his chair. Then maybe you're using the wrong metrics. That's what I'm afraid of. She stood, walked to the window, stared out at the parking lot. If they say no, if they refuse to fund this, then we find another way. She turned to look at him. You'd keep going even if they cut us off? Too many people counting on this now. Marcus stood, joined her at the window. We don't stop. We just figure out a new path. Sophie's voice drifted up from downstairs. She was visiting after school, doing homework at the counter while Tommy watched her. Catherine smiled at the sound. Your daughter's right, you know. You never give up. Learned it from her mother. They stood there at the window, close enough that Marcus could smell her perfume, feel the warmth radiating from her. The moment stretched, loaded with things neither of them knew how to say. Then Catherine stepped back, professional distance reasserting itself like a shield. I should get back to the office. Prep for Thursday. After she left, Marcus sat down at his desk and stared at the wall, trying not to think about the way his pulse had quickened when she stood close, the way he'd wanted to reach out and touch her hand, the way Jennifer's photo smiled at him from his wallet like she was giving permission he wasn't ready to ask for. 3 months into the pilot program, Catherine started showing signs Marcus should have recognized sooner. Dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't hide anymore, weight dropping from her already slim frame, hands trembling slightly when she poured coffee. She was running Sterling Enterprises and overseeing the pilot simultaneously, 90-hour weeks that would break anyone eventually. Marcus cornered her in the office above the diner on a Tuesday afternoon. When's the last time you actually slept? Catherine didn't look up from her laptop. I'll sleep when the board approves the program. You're going to collapse before then. I'm fine. But her voice lacked conviction, and when she reached for her water glass, she knocked it over instead, reflexes too slow, coordination failing. Thursday morning, the day of the board meeting, David called Marcus at 7 a.m. Catherine had collapsed in her office an hour earlier. Paramedics had taken her to Mercy General. Exhaustion, dehydration, blood pressure spiking dangerous levels. They were keeping her overnight for observation. Marcus grabbed Sophie and drove to the hospital. Catherine was awake when they arrived, propped up in bed with an IV in her arm, looking smaller somehow, without her armor of expensive clothes and perfect composure. Sophie ran to her bedside. Miss Catherine, are you okay? I am now, sweetheart. Catherine's voice was weak but genuine. Then her eyes found Marcus and panic flashed across her face. The meeting. Forget the meeting. No, the board will kill the program if I'm not there. She tried to sit up, winced, fell back against the pillows. They've been waiting for an excuse. Then I'll go. Catherine stared at him. You're not authorized. Then authorize me. This program is as much mine as yours. Marcus moved closer to the bed. You built the framework, but I've been running it for 3 months. I know every family, every outcome, every dollar spent. If anyone can defend this, it's me. Catherine looked at him for a long moment, something vulnerable showing through that he'd never seen before. Then she picked up her phone and called David. Tell the board Marcus Hayes will present in my place. Give him full authorization. Yes, I'm sure. Do it. 2 hours later, Marcus stood outside the Sterling Enterprises boardroom wearing his wedding suit. Still too tight, still too short, still the best he had. 12 board members waited inside, average age 60, average net worth $50 million. People who'd never worried about rent or groceries or whether their kid could afford pencils. He walked in and they looked at him like he was a janitor who'd wandered into the wrong room. Robert Blackwell, the chairman, had silver hair and eyes like ice chips. Mr. Hayes, this is highly irregular. Miss Sterling is hospitalized. I'm here to present the Second Chances Initiative. Marcus's voice came out steadier than he felt. We weren't informed of any initiative. Blackwell glanced around the table, seeing his confusion mirrored. She's been running this off the books? Using her discretionary fund, the pilot has been operational for 3 months. Jennifer Walsh, the CFO, leaned forward, 52, sharp as broken glass, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Marcus made in a month. How much has been spent? $12,800 on 3 participants over 90 days. That's over $4,000 per person. What's the return on investment? Marcus felt his temper rising but kept his voice level. ROI isn't measured in quarters when you're changing lives. It's measured in futures that wouldn't exist otherwise. That's not how business works, Mr. Hayes. Thomas Chen, another board member, spoke up. 58, venture capitalist, reputation for ruthlessness. What are your qualifications exactly? I was a waiter before this. Stunned silence. Then actual laughter from 2 members. Chen's expression hardened. And Miss Sterling put you in charge of a company initiative. What were you doing? Serving her coffee? The implication was clear. Ugly. Marcus's hands clenched, but he forced them to relax. She put someone who understands poverty in charge of fighting poverty. Revolutionary concept, I know. He pulled out his laptop, projected the screen onto the boardroom wall. Photos appeared. Data. Testimonials. Diana Chen, single mother of 2, was making 24,000 stocking shelves overnight. The program provided childcare support and job training. She now makes $42,000 as a medical billing specialist. She started a childcare co-op that serves 5 families. Generated approximately $12,000 in additional city tax revenue this year. Next slide. Kevin Brooks, artist, was working construction 60 hours a week. The program gave him studio access and a temporary stipend. He's now self-sufficient at $40,000 annual income from commission work. He mentors 2 younger artists from the program. Next slide. Amanda Foster, recent nursing graduate, drowning in debt, working 2 jobs, burning out. The program connected her with debt consolidation. She now focuses on nursing full-time and leads the mentorship program at City Hospital. 3 nurses hired through our placement partnership. Blackwell cut him off. Lovely stories, but Miss Sterling wants to scale this to $2.5 million in year 1. That's potentially 200 people at your current cost. What happens when they fail? When they relapse? When they waste our money? Marcus closed the laptop. Then we learn from it, like we learned from Robert Patterson, who dropped out of welding certification. Failure happens, but 3 successes out of 4 attempts is a 75% success rate. What's your success rate on venture capital investments, Mr. Chen? Chen's face flushed. That's not comparable, isn't it? You bet on people and ideas hoping they'll succeed. So do we. The difference is our investments have hearts beating inside them. I move to suspend this initiative pending Miss Sterling's recovery. Blackwell's voice was final, dismissive. Marcus felt rage building, white-hot and clarifying. You're not investing in a program, you're investing in dignity. His voice rang out loud in the expensive room. Miss Sterling's mother was a waitress, worked 2 jobs her whole life. When she got hurt, a construction worker who could barely afford breakfast organized a fundraiser, saved her life, changed Miss Sterling's life. That man didn't do it for tax benefits. He did it because Grace Sterling remembered his name, because dignity matters more than profit margins. The room went quiet. Marcus walked to the head of the table, stood behind Blackwell's chair, addressed them all. You sit here in $5,000 suits making decisions about people you've never met, people whose names you don't know, whose struggles you can't imagine. I lived in that world. I still do. I know what it's like to work 60 hours and still come up short, to choose between your kid's medicine and rent, to watch your daughter learn not to ask for things because you can't afford them. His voice dropped lower, more intense. Diana volunteers at the program now, helping other mothers navigate the system. Kevin mentors young artists who can't afford school. Amanda trains new nurses with patients she didn't have when she was drowning. That's not on your spreadsheets, but that's what lasts. That's what compounds. That's real return on investment. People becoming strong enough to lift others. Jennifer Walsh started to interrupt, but Marcus kept going. If you cut this program, you're not cutting costs. You're cutting hope, and I won't be part of that. He looked at Blackwell. Either you approve funding or I walk, and I'll tell every media outlet in the city exactly why. That Sterling Enterprises board cares more about quarterly earnings than the people their CEO nearly killed herself trying to help. The threat landed. Blackwell's jaw tightened. If Marcus walked and talked, the story would be devastating. Billionaire collapses from overwork trying to help people, while board kills her program. Bad press, a potential stock impact, shareholder questions. But Thomas Chen stood up. Marcus braced for another attack. Instead, Chen's voice came out quiet, reflective. My father was a janitor, worked for the same company 40 years. When he had a stroke that they fired him. No pension, no insurance, nothing. We lost our house. I was 14. He looked around the table. I built my fortune so my family would never face that again. But I forgot what it felt like to be powerless. This man, he gestured at Marcus, is reminding me. Chen turned to Blackwell. I vote to approve funding. Full $2.5 million. Jennifer Walsh studied her notes. I need more data, but I don't oppose. She looked at Marcus with something like respect. You've got backbone. That counts for something. 3 board members voted yes immediately. 4 more followed Chen's lead. 2 voted no, including Blackwell. 3 abstained. The motion passed 7-2 with 3 abstentions. The program would continue, would expand, would get its chance. Marcus nearly collapsed with relief. He thanked them and walked out before his legs gave out, made it to the elevator before the shaking started. Rode down to the lobby and sat on a marble bench trying to remember how to breathe. His phone rang, Catherine calling from the hospital. David just told me, you did it. We did it. You built it. I just defended it. Her voice was warm, proud, intimate in a way that made his chest tight. No, you saved it. Thank you, Marcus, for everything. Get some rest. I'll come by tonight. I'd like that. Over the next 5 months, the program expanded carefully. By month 5, they were serving 25 families. Marcus hired a small team, 3 case managers, 1 administrator. The office above the diner grew to occupy 2 rooms. Catherine recovered and returned to work, but with mandatory breaks that Marcus enforced personally, showing up at her office to drag her away from her desk when she worked too late. They grew closer during those months. Coffee meetings that lasted longer than necessary. Dinners to discuss the program that turned into conversations about everything else. Marcus felt something shifting between them. Something that scared him because it felt like betraying Jennifer's memory, but also felt right in a way he couldn't deny. Sophie noticed. Miss Catherine makes you smile, Daddy, like you used to smile in the pictures with Mommy. Marcus pulled her onto his lap. Is that okay with you? Sophie nodded seriously. Mommy would want you to be happy. She told me in my dream. Month 8 brought a crisis that tested everything Marcus thought he knew about trust and mercy. He was reviewing financials when he noticed something wrong. Small discrepancies, amounts that didn't quite add up. $15,000 missing over 2 months. He spent 3 days tracking the trail, sick dread building as the pattern emerged. Patrick Sullivan, 32 years old, case manager Marcus had hired 4 months ago. Good credentials, seemed genuinely committed to the work. The money had gone out in small amounts, vendor payments, supply purchases, except the vendors didn't exist and the supplies never arrived. Marcus confronted him in the office on a Friday afternoon. Patrick's face crumbled immediately, all pretense gone. "My mother has cancer. She needed surgery. Insurance wouldn't cover it." His voice broke. "I was going to pay it back, I swear." Marcus felt torn in directions he couldn't reconcile. Patrick had stolen from families depending on this program, from people with nothing. But his mother really was sick, really did need surgery, really would die without it. $15,000 was the difference between life and death, and Patrick had made the choice any son might make. "You betrayed every person we're trying to help." "I know, I'm sorry, I was desperate." Desperate doesn't excuse theft. Marcus stood up, started pacing the small office. "You could have come to me, we could have figured something out. Instead, you stole from people who have less than you do." He called Catherine. Then he called Thomas Chen, the board member who'd supported him, who understood what poverty did to people's choices. They met at the diner that night. Marcus, Catherine, Chen. Patrick's mother really was dying. Surgery cost $18,000. Patrick had stolen 15, was desperate for the rest. Chen listened to everything, sipping coffee Tommy had made special. Finally he spoke, voice measured and thoughtful. "Your instinct is compassion. That's good. But compassion without accountability enables bad behavior. Here's what I recommend. Fire Patrick. He broke trust. But offer a repayment plan, $15,000 over 5 years, no interest. If he defaults, press charges. His mother's surgery? The program pays it as a grant, not a loan. We don't punish dying mothers for their sons' crimes. That's not justice, that's cruelty." The wisdom of it settled over Marcus like clarity after confusion. Justice wasn't revenge. It was holding people accountable while still honoring their humanity. They implemented it exactly as Chen suggested. Patrick was fired, devastated but accepting the terms. His mother's surgery was scheduled and paid for, $18,000 from program funds. External auditors were hired, 2 signature rules implemented. Trust had to be earned now, not assumed. Marcus learned something crucial in that moment. Helping people meant sometimes saying no, sometimes drawing lines, sometimes letting consequences teach lessons that kindness alone couldn't. The program got stronger for it. Less naive, more sustainable. By month 12, Second Chances Initiative had served 48 families. Success rate held at 73%. 35 families thriving, 13 still in progress or having dropped out. Local press started covering them positively. 3 more cities wanted to replicate the model. Marcus's salary had increased to the full $75,000 after the board approval. He'd moved to a 2-bedroom apartment. Sophie finally had her own room, but stayed in the same neighborhood, same building even, just 1 floor up. Then the city budget crisis hit. Municipal deficit, social services getting cut, nonprofits losing funding. Councilman James Wheeler, fiscal conservative with political ambitions, proposed eliminating all discretionary grants to private initiatives. Second Chances used several city partnerships for job placement and resource referrals. If Wheeler's proposal passed, the program would lose legitimacy, access, the infrastructure that made it work. The city council hearing was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon in late November. Marcus would have to testify, defend the program publicly, convince 12 council members that this was worth saving. Catherine couldn't come. Conflict of interest, Sterling Enterprises did business with the city. She'd be seen as buying influence. Marcus went alone. City Hall was all marble columns and faded glory, built in an era when cities still believed in grandness. The council chamber held 200 people, media cameras in the back, audience packed with residents who'd come to fight for their own causes. Marcus sat in the front row in his wedding suit. He'd finally bought a new one that fit, using his own money, a symbol of how far he'd come, palms sweating despite the better fit. Wheeler spoke first, laying out his proposal with charts and graphs and cold efficiency. Cut all private program funding, save $800,000 annually, redirect it to essential services. He never used words like charity or handout, but the implication was there in every slide. Private initiatives were inefficient, wasteful, feel-good programs that didn't deliver results. Then he looked directly at Marcus. We have Mr. Hayes here from Second Chances Initiative, a program run by Billionaire Sterling and a former waiter. They want us to believe they're changing lives. Let's hear what they have to say. Marcus walked to the podium. 12 council members stared down at him from their raised platform. 200 people watched from the audience. Cameras rolled. This was the moment everything could fall apart. Councilman Wheeler is right about one thing. I was a waiter, still work one shift a week at Pine Street Diner because I don't want to forget where I come from. His voice came out steady, stronger than he felt. But he's wrong about private initiatives being inefficient. He pulled out printed sheets, distributed them to the council. Second Chances Initiative has a 73% success rate. The city's job training program, 40%. We spend $8,700 per participant annually. The city spends $12,000 for worse outcomes. The difference? We see people as individuals, not statistics. We customize support instead of forcing everyone into the same box. Wheeler leaned forward. That's an unfair comparison. Is it? Let me introduce you to real people, not statistics. Marcus gestured to the audience. Diana Chen, please stand. Diana rose from her seat wearing professional clothes, confident in a way she hadn't been a year ago. Diana was making $24,000 working overnight. Applied to the city program, waitlisted 8 months. Our program helped immediately. She now makes $42,000, supervises 8 employees. She pays $4,700 more in city taxes annually than before, and she started a childcare co-op that serves 7 families. He gestured to another section. Kevin Brooks, stand up. Kevin stood, the young artist who'd been working construction. Kevin applied for city arts grants 3 times, rejected every time. Our program supported him for 6 months. He now earns $43,000 from commissioned work. His paintings hang in your lobby, Councilman Wheeler. You walk past them every day. He pays city taxes on income that wouldn't exist without our support. Councilwoman Maria Garcia, a Latina woman in her 50s who represented the district where most participants lived, spoke up. How many of your participants are city residents, Mr. Hayes? All 48. That's a program requirement. We only serve people who live and work here, who pay taxes here, who build community here. And how much tax revenue have they generated since their income increases? Marcus had anticipated this question, had the numbers ready. Approximately $94,000 in additional city taxes this year. The program received $25,000 in city partnership grants. We've generated nearly 4 times that amount in new revenue, and that's just year 1. As these families continue to thrive, that revenue compounds annually. The math hit hard. You couldn't argue with numbers that clear. Several council members were nodding, scribbling notes. But Wheeler wasn't done. What about failures? What about the ones who quit, who waste resources, who prove these feel-good programs don't actually work? Marcus took a breath, steadied himself. We've had 13 participants who didn't complete the program. Robert Patterson was one. Couldn't finish welding certification due to struggles we couldn't overcome. We tried to help, but he wasn't ready. That hurt. Still hurts. His voice went quiet, genuine. But failure is part of any investment, Councilman. Your own business ventures have failed sometimes. You don't stop investing because some bets don't pay off. You learn from failures and improve the model. This isn't venture capital, isn't it? Marcus's voice rose, passion breaking through. You're betting taxpayer money that your programs will help people. So are we. The difference is we're winning our bets more often than you are. 73% versus 40%. Those numbers don't lie. He moved away from the podium, addressing the entire chamber now. His voice went softer, more personal. My wife Jennifer died 5 years ago. Drunk driver, red light, gone in an instant. The EMTs who came, they tried everything. The nurses at the hospital, they fought for her. She died anyway, and I don't blame them. They did their best with the resources they had. His eyes found Amanda in the audience, standing in her nursing scrubs. But if we keep cutting programs that help people like Amanda Foster stay in their jobs, if we keep dismissing ordinary people as inefficient or unworthy, then who's going to be there next time? Who's going to save your wife, your daughter, your mother when they need help? Who's going to show up when everything falls apart? The chamber went completely silent. Even Wheeler had no response. Marcus let the silence stretch, let the question hang in the air, where no one could ignore it. Maria Garcia picked up her papers. I have another question, Mr. Hayes. How many of your participants have gone on to volunteer or mentor others? Marcus smiled. 28, Diana's childcare co-op, Kevin mentoring young artists, Amanda training new nurses. They're not just taking anymore. They're giving back, building community, making this city stronger. Garcia looked at her fellow council members. Seems to me a program that generates 4 times its cost in tax revenue, while also creating volunteers and mentors, is exactly the kind of partnership the city should be expanding, not cutting. Another council member spoke up, David Kim, who represented the downtown district. I move to continue city partnerships with all qualifying private programs, with Second Chances Initiative as the model for evaluation criteria. The vote happened quickly after that, 9-3 in favor of continuing partnerships and creating a qualification framework. Wheeler's proposal didn't just fail, it was reversed into something better. Second Chances was safe, and the model they'd built would now help other programs prove their worth. Marcus walked out of City Hall into afternoon sunshine, feeling like he could finally breathe. Diana and Kevin and Amanda caught up with him on the steps, surrounding him in a group hug that felt like vindication, like family, like proof that all the struggle meant something. That night there was celebration at the diner. Ray closed early, hosted a private party. All the program participants came bringing their families, their kids, their gratitude. Tommy cooked actual good food. Lisa served with a smile. Sophie ran around playing with the other children, happy in a way Marcus hadn't seen since Jennifer died. Catherine arrived late, slipping in quietly, but Sophie saw her and ran over immediately. Miss Catherine, we won. Daddy was amazing. Catherine's eyes found Marcus across the crowded diner, and something passed between them that felt like more than friendship, more than partnership. Something neither of them had been brave enough to name yet. Later, after most people had gone home and Sophie had fallen asleep on a booth bench, Marcus and Catherine stood outside in the parking lot. The night was cold and clear, stars visible despite the city lights. They'd been moving toward this moment for months, but neither had been ready to cross the line. You've changed everything, Catherine said quietly, her breath visible in the cold air. We changed it together. No, you changed me. She looked at him, vulnerability showing through all her careful defenses. I came into that diner a year ago thinking I knew how to help people, thinking money solved problems, that I could fix things from a distance. You taught me that dignity matters more than dollars, that listening matters more than solving, that real change happens slow, with patience, with trust earned, not assumed. Marcus moved closer, close enough to see the flecks of gold in her dark eyes. You taught me it's okay to need help, that accepting support isn't weakness, that starting over doesn't mean forgetting what came before, just making room for what comes next. I haven't been able to stop thinking about you, Catherine whispered. Haven't been able to imagine my life without you in it anymore. I know, me neither. Marcus reached up, touched her face, felt her lean into his hand. But I need you to understand, Sophie comes first, always. And Jennifer, his voice caught, Jennifer will always be part of who I am. I know, I wouldn't want it any other way. Catherine covered his hand with hers. I'm not trying to replace her. I'm just hoping there's room for me, too. Marcus thought about Jennifer, about the promises he'd made, about the photo that still sat on his nightstand. And he felt, for the first time since she died, like she was giving him permission. Like she'd want this for him, like moving forward didn't mean leaving her behind. He kissed Catherine in the parking lot of Pine Street Diner, and it felt like beginning again. Like second chances weren't just for other people, like Maybe broken hearts could heal if you were brave enough to try. 18 months after that first Friday night with the $0 tip, Marcus was working his regular shift at the diner. He'd kept his promise, one night a week, every Friday, no matter how busy the program got. It was his anchor, his reminder that success didn't mean forgetting where you'd come from. The program now served 90 families across the city. 3 other cities had launched their own versions using the second chances model. Marcus had a team of 12. Catherine had cut back to 60-hour weeks and looked healthier than she had in years. Sophie was in 3rd grade, thriving, confident in ways that made Marcus's heart swell. She called Catherine by her first name now, had stopped asking when they were getting married, and started just assuming they would. Marcus and Catherine had moved slowly, carefully, honoring both Jennifer's memory and Sophie's needs. But last month, Catherine had finally stayed over for the first time, and Sophie had come running out of her room in the morning yelling, "You're still here!" with such joy that both adults had started crying. Tonight the diner was quiet, the Friday rush having passed. Frank Martinez sat at the counter finishing his coffee, telling a news story Marcus hadn't heard before about a load of furniture he'd delivered to Seattle. A young woman in booth 3 was studying for finals, counting coins for coffee, her face going red when she came up short. Marcus brought her the check already marked 0. "Someone paid it forward for you. Just do the same someday." She looked up with tears forming. "Really? Thank you so much. I really needed this tonight." "I know the feeling. Study hard." Then Marcus noticed the young man in the corner booth, mid-20s, clothes stained with paint. Not house paint, but the kind artists used, vibrant colors dried into the fabric. He'd been sitting there an hour with 1 cup of coffee, staring at the menu with the careful attention of someone counting every dollar. Marcus brought the coffee pot over. "Long day?" "Yeah, working 3 jobs, trying to save for art supplies. Can't afford the good stuff, you know? But the cheap paint doesn't layer right, doesn't last." The young man's voice was exhausted but still held passion when he talked about his work. "I know someone who might be able to help with that." Marcus pulled out a card, the program's card now, professional, legitimate. "Come by Monday. We have a program that helps artists." The young man took the card like it was something precious. "Is this for real?" "It's real. Just give us a chance to see your work." When the man asked for his check, $2.50 for the coffee, Marcus picked it up. "This one's on me. Someone paid it forward for me once. Now I'm paying it forward to you." The young man's eyes went wet. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. Just keep creating. The world needs what you make." After he left, Marcus cleared the table and turned to find Catherine sitting in the corner booth, the same booth where she'd sat that first night, where everything had started. Coffee and apple pie, just like before, but this time she was smiling. "You know, most people would say you're enabling him." Marcus sat down across from her, something he'd never have dared that first night. Now it felt natural, right? Like coming home. "Most people don't understand that sometimes a $2 coffee and a kind word means someone sees you, remembers your name, treats you like you matter." Catherine reached across the table, took his hand. The engagement ring he'd given her 3 weeks ago caught the light, modest by her standards, everything by his, chosen together because they were building something new that belonged to both of them. "I know, you taught me that." She stood to leave, placing bills on the table. $2.50s like always, the ritual they'd kept, with a folded note underneath. Marcus picked it up and read, "Still the best investment I ever made. Love you. Come home soon. See." He looked up and she was at the door, turning back to catch his eye. "Sophie's waiting up. She wants to show you her science project. Something about the life cycle of stars. The book you bought her is still paying dividends." Catherine smiled. "Best $15 I ever spent." Then softer, "See you at home." Marcus stood there holding the note, feeling the weight of the past and the promise of the future balanced perfectly for the first time since Jennifer died. He put the $100 in the team tip jar where it would be split tomorrow. Kept the note in his pocket next to the original one, the one that had started everything. This is not charity. This is a proposal. Sophie would be waiting at Catherine's penthouse. Their penthouse now, though Marcus still couldn't quite believe he lived in a place with a doorman and a view of the whole city. his daughter and the woman he loved, both proof that second chances were real, that dignity mattered more than money, that some tips changed everything. Tomorrow he'd meet the young painter at the office, see if they could help him the way they'd helped Kevin and 40 other artists. Tonight he was going home to his family, the old one he'd lost and the new one he'd found, both living together in his heart without contradiction. Outside, the rain had stopped. The streets were quiet. Marcus locked up the diner and walked to his car, still modest, still reliable, still his. He thought about that first night, standing at the same door in the rain with a mysterious note in his pocket and no idea his whole life was about to change. Some tips weren't measured in dollars. Some tips changed lives, and some tips kept changing them, rippling outward in ways you could never predict, from stranger to stranger to stranger, forward through time, forever multiplying, never ending, always becoming more. He got in his car and drove home to Sophie and Catherine, to the life he'd built from broken pieces, to the second chance he'd almost been too afraid to take. The note in his pocket felt warm. Tomorrow would bring new families to help, new challenges to face, new chances to pass forward what had been given to him. But tonight he was just going home, and that was everything. Word count, 6,000 pounds, part 3 final, complete, adherence, exact outline, climaxes 4 total, board, embezzlement, resolution, city council, romantic resolution, quotes, 6+ embedded, ending, single integrated resolution, timeline, clear markers, character consistency, fixed Amanda age issue, no double ending, epilogue naturally integrated.